Question 1. In developing a risk register for a global technology firm, which combination of techniques best ensures identification of both operational and emerging digital risks? A. SWOT analysis plus brainstorming sessions. B. Delphi method and external stakeholder interviews. C. Pestle analysis and historical incident analysis. D. Process mapping and employee surveys. Correct answer: B. Delphi method and external stakeholder interviews. Explanation: Delphi method taps expert consensus on emerging threats. External stakeholder interviews uncover supply chain and regulatory risks outsiders see. Other combos are useful but miss either emergent or outsider insight. Question 2. A firm uses Pestle analysis to identify macro-level risks and SWOT for internal strengths-weaknesses. What is a major limitation of relying solely on these two tools? A. They are purely quantitative, lacking qualitative depth. B. They often miss interdependencies among risks. C. They ignore stakeholder voice. D. They focus only on short-term risks. Correct answer: B. They often miss interdependencies among risks. Explanation: Pestle and SWOT produce siloed lists. Without linking risks, you can't detect systemic or cascading effects. Stakeholder voice may be partially covered. Focus isn't strictly short-term. Question 3. Ms. Reyes is risk manager at a manufacturing company expanding into Southeast Asia. The firm conducts traditional incident reviews and workshops. However, volatile political events and regional climate shifts pose new threats. Which method should Ms. Reyes add to the process and why? A. More incident reviews. They show actual historical issues. B. Geographic risk profiling. They evaluate country-level exposures. C. FMEA. Maps out failure modes and processes. D. Monte Carlo simulation quantifies probability distributions. Correct answer: B. Geographic risk profiling. They evaluate country-level exposures. Explanation: country-level profiling captures political, regulatory, environmental context that's external and often overlooked by standard incident reviews. FMEA is internal. Monte Carlo is quantitative. But geographic profiling directly addresses emerging locale risks. Question 4. When conducting stakeholder consultation to identify ESG-related risks, which approach best balances inclusiveness and feasibility? A. Online surveys to all employees and suppliers. B. Focus groups with top management only. C. Structured interviews with a representative sample. D. Public disclosure forums open to anyone. Correct answer: C. Structured interviews with a representative sample. Explanation: structured interviews with a representative sample yield quality insights from diverse stakeholder groups without being overwhelming. Surveys may be too generic, focus groups too narrow, public forums too unmanageable. Question 5. Why is scenario analysis particularly valuable in identifying emerging risks in a fast-changing industry like crypto? A. It produces precise quantitative metrics. B. It explores hypothetical futures and stress events. C. It uses only historical data. D. It relies on regulatory requirements. Correct answer: B. It explores hypothetical futures and stress events. Explanation: scenario analysis imagines plausible futures, economic downturns, hacking incidents, so teams can uncover potential exposures not seen in past data. It's qualitative, inventive, and forward-looking. Question 6. Mr. Singh leads enterprise-wide safety risk identification at a chemical plant. He conducted internal workshops and pestle analysis, but senior management still lacks awareness of cyber-physical risks. What is the most effective additional step? A. Install more sensors and alarms. B. Conduct a cross-functional cyber-physical risk workshop. C. Increase frequency of PESTEL refresh sessions. D. Outsource safety reviews. Correct answer. B. Conduct a cross-functional cyber-physical risk workshop. Explanation. Bringing together IT, operations, safety teams helps identify how cyber incidents could impact physical safety, bridging silos. Sensors help detection later. Outsourcing or more PESTEL doesn't build internal awareness or integration. Question 7. In using a risk taxonomy to identify risk categories, what's a key benefit? A. Focuses on financial losses only. B. Creates a common language across the firm. C. Guarantees regulatory compliance. D. Eliminates all subjective judgment. Correct answer. B. Creates a common language across the firm. Explanation. Taxonomies classify risks consistently: cyber, operational, reputational, so different teams discuss risks in shared terms. It doesn't eliminate subjectivity or ensure compliance by itself. Question 8. Why is stakeholder consultation critical for identifying legal regulatory risks in cross-border mergers? A. It speeds up audit cycles. B. It reveals local interpretation and enforcement nuances. C. It always uncovers hidden contracts. D. It reduces insurance premiums. Correct answer. B. It reveals local interpretation and enforcement nuances. Explanation. Local stakeholders, regulators, counsel, explain region-specific interpretations and enforcement realities that global teams may miss. Other options are secondary or unrelated benefits. Question 9. Dr. Alvarez evaluates pandemic readiness in a large healthcare system. The current risk register lists pandemic generically. No detailed sub-risks or operational triggers exist. What should Dr. Alvarez do to create more actionable risk identification? A. Label it as a high-scoring risk without detail. B. Break it into sub-risks: supply, staffing, legal exposure with thresholds. C. Wait until the next regulatory update. D. Insure against pandemics. Correct answer. B. Break it into sub-risks with thresholds. Explanation. Disaggregating into supply chain, staffing, regulatory readiness allows targeted monitoring, KRIs, and clear response plans. Labeling high doesn't mean actionable. Insurance helps transfer risk, not identify it. Question 10. Qualitative legal risk assessment in financial services is best supported by which approach? A. Risk appetite statements only. B. Regulatory mapping with impact estimation. C. Insurance purchase. D. Annual external audit. Correct answer. B. Regulatory mapping with impact estimation. Explanation. Mapping regulations to operations and estimating consequences enables structured evaluation of legal exposure, rather than relying on generic appetite or audits alone. Question 11. Why is a whistleblower hotline a critical element in compliance risk control? A. It discourages employee complaints. B. It provides early detection of internal misconduct. C. It fully prevents money laundering. D. It eliminates need for training. Correct answer. B. It provides early detection of internal misconduct. Explanation. Hotlines allow staff to report concerns anonymously, catching problems early. They do not prevent them entirely nor replace training. Question 12. Mr. Wu is compliance head at an e-commerce platform operating across Europe subject to GDPR. They only relied on generic policies and annual training. A data breach exposes customer data and triggers a €10 fine. What change should Mr. Wu implement to improve preventative compliance? A. Increase annual training frequency. B. Conduct regular GDPR-specific legal risk mapping and impact assessment. C. Outsource data protection. D. Discontinue international operations. Correct answer. B. Conduct regular GDPR-specific legal risk mapping and impact assessment. Explanation. Structured mapping identifies where GDPR applies, processes at risk, and tailors controls proactively. Training alone won't tie legal obligations to operations. Outsourcing is not a substitute for internal governance. Question 13. What is the primary benefit of integrating legal compliance risk with ERM dashboards? A. It increases audit hours. B. Provides executives consolidated visibility. C. Hides compliance issues from shareholders. D. Eliminates need for internal control systems. Correct answer. B. Provides executives consolidated visibility. Explanation. A unified dashboard shows legal, financial, strategic risks in one view, supporting better board-level prioritization and decision-making. Question 14. Which is the most effective treatment for regulatory compliance risk in banking? A. Acceptance, since rules change constantly. B. Transfer the risk via legal insurance. C. Implement controls based on risk-based auditing. D. Deny regulatory jurisdiction. Correct answer. C. Implement controls based on risk-based auditing. Explanation. Risk-based auditing targets high-exposure areas with tailored controls, reducing likelihood of noncompliance. Insurance and denial are not viable, and acceptance is irresponsible. Question 15. Ms. Okoro is leading AML risk governance at an African fintech expanding into remittances. They identified AML as high but rely on manual transaction reviews. They miss suspicious patterns and get flagged by regulators. Which improvement aligns best with effective ERM? A. Automate transaction monitoring with thresholds and KRI triggers. B. Hire more reviewers. C. Postpone expansion. D. Stop offering remittances. Correct answer. A. Automate transaction monitoring with thresholds and KRI triggers. Explanation. Automation combined with KRIs enables scalable, consistent detection of irregular activity. Hiring more people doesn't improve consistency. Postponement or stopping reduces growth unnecessarily. Question 16. When assessing legal risk exposure from trade compliance, what's a key analysis? A. Identify jurisdiction and sanction schedules, then map to trade flows. B. Track annual revenue only. C. Estimate maximum fine without mapping. D. Count number of products. Correct answer. A. Identify jurisdiction and sanction schedules, then map to trade flows. Explanation. Mapping relevant laws to actual trade routes and volume reveals where sanctions or export controls apply. Simple counts or revenue don't capture legal exposure. Question 17. How does a risk-based audit approach help in anti-corruption compliance? A. Audits are scheduled every quarter. B. Focuses audit effort where corruption risks and transaction volume intersect. C. Eliminates the need for due diligence. D. Only audits external partners. Correct answer. B. Focuses audit effort where corruption risks and transaction volume intersect. Explanation. This aligns resources around high-risk operations policies. It doesn't replace due diligence, and audits still include internal functions and partners as needed. Question 18. What is the advantage of employing Monte Carlo simulation in project risk analysis? A. It produces one deterministic outcome. B. It models uncertainty across variables to estimate probability distributions. C. It avoids subjectivity. D. It only works for qualitative risks. Correct answer. B. It models uncertainty across variables to estimate probability distributions. Explanation: Monte Carlo allows assessment of thousands of scenarios, showing range and likelihood of outcomes. It's quantitative, probabilistic, and embraces subjectivity intelligently. Question 19. Why might conditional value at risk, CVaR, be preferred over VaR in financial risk measurement? A. CVaR is easier to compute. B. CVaR considers the tail beyond the percentile, giving more insight into extreme losses. C. CVaR ignores extreme events. D. CVaR and VaR are identical. Correct answer: B. CVaR considers the tail beyond the percentile, giving more insight into extreme losses. Explanation: VaR gives a single threshold loss, but VaR averages losses beyond that threshold, thus informing risk managers about severity of tail risk. Question 20. Scenario: Dr. Kim is modeling supply chain disruption risk via Monte Carlo. She has variables for delay probability, replacement cost, and demand drop. Her simulation output shows 5% chance of total cost exceeding 1M. What is a next prudent step before presenting to executives? A. Present raw simulation, numbers without context. B. Perform a sensitivity analysis to identify key drivers. C. Increase number of iterations only. D. Replace Monte Carlo with simple estimates. Correct answer: B. Perform a sensitivity analysis to identify key drivers. Explanation: Understanding which inputs drive the tail risk lets executives focus controls on high leverage areas. More iterations improve precision but not insight. Simple estimates would regress. Question 21. In Bayesian risk modeling, what is the key benefit? A. It ignores prior knowledge. B. It updates probability estimates as new data appears. C. It gives only historical metrics. D. It can't be applied to ERM. Correct answer: B. It updates probability estimates as new data appears. Explanation: Bayesian methods incorporate prior beliefs and refine them with new evidence, ideal for dynamic risk landscapes. Question 22. How does expected shortfall differ conceptually from expected return? A. Expected shortfall estimates worst-case average loss conditional on being in the tail. B. Expected return measures only downside. C. They are the same metric. D. Expected shortfall is entirely subjective. Correct answer: A. Expected shortfall estimates worst-case average loss conditional on being in the tail. Explanation: Expected shortfall focuses on tail risk, not average performance, helping risk managers prepare for extreme events. Question 23. Mr. Patel uses decision tree analysis to evaluate whether to hedge currency risk for an international contract. He models two branches, hedge or not. However, he has not quantified probability distributions of exchange rate movements. What is the key enhancement to make this analysis robust? A. Use scenario analysis only. B. Assign probabilities to movements and integrate those into the decision tree. C. Choose hedge randomly. D. Remove the hedge branch. Correct answer: B. Assign probabilities to movements and integrate into decision tree. Explanation: A sound decision tree requires probabilities and impacts for each branch. Without them, the tree lacks expected value calculation. Scenario analysis is separate. Removing branches weakens insight. Question 24. Why use sensitivity analysis after a Monte Carlo simulation? A. To eliminate uncertainty. B. To show how results change with variation in inputs. C. To convert quantitative to qualitative. D. To visualize scenario narratives. Correct answer: B. To show how results change with variation in inputs. Explanation. Sensitivity analysis reveals which inputs, like cost escalation or delay duration, drive the overall risk, guiding where control efforts should focus. Question 25. Expected shortfall is particularly important when risk managers are concerned about A. Worst-case scenario averaging. B. Mode of distribution. C. Frequency of small losses. D. Mean variance only. Correct answer: A. Worst-case scenario averaging. Explanation. It focuses on tail risk severity, not frequency or variance around the mean. Question 26. Which method best integrates contingency planning into quantitative ERM? A. Assigning 0% probability to worst case. B. Running Monte Carlo combining disruption probabilities with contingency cost scenarios. C. Only documenting manual recovery steps. D. Excluding rare events from model. Correct answer: B. Running Monte Carlo combining disruption probabilities with contingency scenarios. Explanation. This quantifies the cost-benefit of contingencies under uncertainty, not just listing steps. Question 27. In economic capital and RAROC frameworks, why adjust returns for risk? A. To inflate performance. B. To compare investment performance on a level playing field, considering capital at risk. C. To avoid measuring risk entirely. D. To satisfy auditors only. Correct answer: B. To compare investment performance on a level playing field, considering capital at risk. Explanation. RAROC informs decision makers which opportunities generate returns above the cost of capital, adjusted for risk. Question 28. Why use scenario planning with qualitative assumptions in addition to quantitative models? A. To create more data. B. To explore complex systemic shocks that cannot be mathematically modeled. C. To replace the Monte Carlo completely. D. It isn't helpful. Correct answer: B. To explore complex systemic shocks that cannot be mathematically modeled. Explanation. Qualitative scenarios, e.g., geopolitical breakdown, help surface impacts that lie outside numeric bounds of models. Question 29. Scenario. Ms. Lopez is assessing derivatives used to hedge interest rate risk. The current model uses VaR, but senior management is concerned after the 2008 crisis. What should she incorporate to improve insight into tail exposure? A. Continue using VaR. People are used to it. B. Add conditional VaR and stress testing scenarios to the analysis. C. Eliminate hedging activities. D. Only monitor daily mark-to-market. Correct answer: B. Add conditional VaR and stress testing scenarios to the analysis. Explanation. C. VaR enriches understanding beyond VaR threshold. Stress tests show behavior under specific extremes. This enhances risk visibility. Question 30. Which best summarizes the role of quantitative risk techniques in ERM? A. They guarantee risk elimination. B. They provide probability distributions and tail analysis to support strategic decisions. C. They are only used in financial services. D. They remove need for qualitative judgment. Correct answer: B. They provide probability distributions and tail analysis to support strategic decisions. Explanation. Advanced techniques give deeper insight into both likely and extreme outcomes, aiding decision makers. They complement, not replace, qualitative judgment.